What myth about your country is a lie, but everyone believes it? Story 1. We are all relaxed, go-with-the-flow people who are happy to bend the rules for a laugh. We fudge, love rules, mate, and we argue the shoot out of them. Answer. Canadian here who used to travel to Maui before you know what. Every single visit we met Australians who became instant friends, which can't just be a coincidence. They all just said shoot in an honest way with wicked senses of humor. I love that. We aren't the type to even be searching for friends on a vacation, but it happens so naturally. Visiting Australia is high on our list. Story 2. That we are in utopia and everyone is happy. 7, 8 years in a row, the happiest country in the world. Then they try to move here and are greeted with 6 months of no sun with population not interested in socializing and small talk. Edit. Aw, fudge. We got the title this year again. Answer. Finland? I've always found it really interesting that my friends that have gone there have all come back, and when I asked how the people were, they would kind of shrug and say, not really sure. They don't really talk much. And I always follow up with, you mean they don't talk to you much as a foreigner? And they've all said, nah, man, they just really don't seem to actually interact much. Story 3. I'm Welsh. I met some Scots on holiday. Their first question was, can you sing? Yes, but that's just me. Answer. TBH, the singing stereotype must be true. My Welsh nan rarely sung, and when she did, sounded like a pro. My great-uncle could project like a tuneful foghorn. My Welsh ex could sing beautifully too. And the Welsh crowd at the footy or rugby, singing Hen Vlad Finadau is just unreal. Port Talbot chucked out more hit singers than some whole countries long. Story 4. That we use the phrase top of the morning. It has never been said by any Irish person ever, and it only ever appears in false American depictions of Irish people. Story 5. That we have lions and elephants in our backyard. No, we live in normal big cities just like the rest of the world. Also, yes, people can be white while living in our country. Answer. This reminds me of a good friend of mine from college who grew up in Tehran. She got tired of all the people asking, commenting, that she must have seen camels all over the place, in her backyard, walking down the street, etc. Her response was, you don't see camels in New York City. Why would we see them in Tehran? Oddly, she also chuckled that the first time she saw a camel was after she immigrated to the U.S. It was in the Bronx Zoo. Yes, the first camel she saw was technically in New York City. Edit. Spelling. Story 6. Everything will eliminate you in Australia. Never been eaten by a croc. Never seen a shark in the wild. Seen plenty of snakes, but they fudge off pretty quickly. Spiders look scarier than they are. Our peak predators are kangaroos, wombats, and koalas. Seriously, if there were awesome predators here, those 3 cuties would not stand a chance in hell. Story 7. I think it is a myth that we are super friendly in Canada. In my experience, that is true outside of the big cities, but here in Toronto, not so much. I think rural people in general are just friendly more often. Being in a crowded city like Toronto makes you impatient and distrusting of people. Answer. As Canadian, I've been told by someone from South America they thought Canadian friendliness was more just being two-faced because we don't say what we actually think. My response was, we confide in the people we trust before we start any conflict with someone. We'd rather maintain civility and not disturb the peace if we can help it, rather than start any open hostilities. Story 8. That we're the same country as Czech Republic, and that we don't have cable TV. Everything else is sadly true. Story 9. It often feels like people from out with Scotland take the whole story around clans and kilts a lot more seriously than we who live in Scotland do. I never hear people where I live talking about their clan. Folks here do enjoy to wear kilts for formal and sports ball occasions, but in my experience, most don't have any strong heritage ties to the tartan they wear. Story 10. No, I don't ride a kangaroo to work. Yes, drop bears are real. No, we're not all bronzed beach bums. Yes, a dingo did eat that baby. It's not fudge funny. Story 11. I have heard the whole everything closes from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. because people take siestas about Spain 1,000 times now. No, it's not because of that. Only kids and elderly will take siestas regularly, if at all. The rest of population pretty much only naps during their holidays or summer. The actual reason it's because a large part of the workforce has split schedule. They go to work in the morning until 2 p.m. or so, have a long lunch break, then come back to finish working during the evening. Yes, it is an absolute pain because you can't even relax or might not even be able to make it home in that time frame. so your only option is stalling around the area awkwardly before going back to work. Most people prefer to have a 0730 to 1530 schedule, then the dreaded 09 to 14, and then 17 to 20. But it is what it is. Answer. A few decades ago, I waited tables at a restaurant in the U.S. that had split schedules. Work from about 10:30 to 1:30 for lunch, and then be back from 5 until maybe 8 or so for dinner. I lived about 20 minutes away, so about 6 total hours of work that ate up over 10 hours of my day. It sucked. There were a lot of students there, and they actually had to show management their class schedule to get out of working those shifts. Story 12. That hygge is a unique and mythical thing that only exists here. It is a thing everywhere, even though not every language has a word for it. Answer. I always found this so confusing. We, hopefully, all do this. What also boggles my mind is the myth that Danes are always so liga-glad and easygoing. You are not. Everything is set in stone here, and nothing can ever be spontaneous and free. I'm not saying that I don't like the order, most of the times. I'm just saying that I've never met more organized and straightforward people. Story 13. People keep saying haggis aren't real, and they absolutely are. I see them all the time, usually on the way home from the pub eating a bag of chips. Sometimes I'll get some chips as well. Story 14. We only have mountains, and we only eat cheese and chocolate, and we all live together with 1,000 cows, and we are all millionaires. Story 15. There is a myth that Canadians are super polite. We're not super polite. We're regular polite. Y'all are just rude as fudge. Story 16. Most people think Filipinos are good singers. We just have a lot of practice during karaoke night, which is almost every night. Story 17. That we are a cyberpunk dystopia where chaebols control everything, and all politicians are controlled by them. This trope has been getting popular recently on social media, and it's really annoying. Yes, Korea has several social issues, but no, that is not what our society is like. Story 18. That Canadians are polite. Being non-confrontational isn't polite. If anything, it's rude because you find out someone is upset with you through the grapevine, which makes it impossible to rectify the situation. Edit. Also, look at the cost of rent and the rampant use of temporary foreign workers in non-essential industries. Our government doesn't care about us just because we have socialized healthcare. Every country except for one does. We are not special. Story 19. Colombians do coke. We sell it, but we rarely consume it. According to the World Health Org, Americans consume it 4 times more than us per capita. I think Mexico has similar stats about internal substances use being way lower than its buyers. Story 20. That clans are a big thing here. The only people who care about clans are American tourists. No one cares that your granddad's dog's sister's aunt's best friend was from Clan McPherson. That doesn't make you Scottish. Story 21. Everyone thinks all Americans eat fast food every day. Most of us actually cook at home, and it's not just burgers and fries. Story 22. That we are all okay with the lack of gun control and regular mass shootings of children in our schools. The vast majority of us are not okay with any of this, but the gun lobby has a tight hold on our government and is extremely well funded. Answer. People really don't seem to understand that. Or, government does not represent the majority. It represents the billionaires and the roughly 30 of citizens that they've conned into their bullshit. While it would be nice to realign with the majority will, 30, entrenched power, and hundreds of billions of dollars is a huge obstacle to overcome in making any meaningful change. That's why communism is so dangerous here. If those 30 gained any semblance of class consciousness, the power structures would be upended overnight. Story 23. That our education is one of the best in the world. It might have been 20 years ago, but nowadays so much funding has been cut from the education, and some extremely stupid reforms have been done just because, and it has made things worse. And the phones have taken all the attention from kids, so they are not even slightly interested in learning. Story 24. That we have an app that everyone uses to see if we're related before having intimacy. Our church maintained birth records so detailed that anyone can trace their lineage back 1,100 years with near-perfect accuracy, and a group of students used this data to make an app as a joke that was called Sif Ya Spella Spiller, literally translated as Forbidden Topic Ruiner, or Forbidden topic spoiler. It was done as a student project and meant to be a joke. Besides, every parent and grandparent can tell you who your 32nd cousins are and who married who from where. My mom even told me that my therapist is actually my aunt because her great-grandfather and my great-great-grandfather were brothers. We don't need the app. Story 25. NZ actually sucks pretty hard. That's why anyone who can leave for something better, usually in Australia, usually does. Answer. New Zealand sucks so hard. Left for 10 years and honestly shocked by how bad it's gotten. No housing stock, crap jobs, cost of living, mental illness, crime, substances, and a local population who have largely left for Australia, only to be replaced by piss-taking foreigners who don't give a fudge about the country. Counting the days until I can go back to Asia. The thing that eliminates me about Kiwis is that they don't realize Australia sucks too. Yes, it's a little better economically, but not all that much. So many things are worse there. Pretty much every negative social statistic, full of nasty creepy crawlies, and Aussies look down on us. Story 26. UK dental hygiene is the worst in the world. It's an old stereotype that doesn't hold up nowadays. The jokes are funny though, I'll admit that. Story 27. That our language is made up of consonants and no vowels. Welsh has more vowels than English. We have 7, not to brag. But ha 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 consonants and spit. Story 28. I'll talk about the country I live in, Japan, and not the one I'm from. No, slurping ramen noodles isn't somehow a compliment to the chef, and not doing so will not lead them to believe you're not enjoying it. It just helps with eating piping hot noodles, and some people insist it makes them taste better. No trying to tip people will not offend them. It doesn't make them think you believe they are underpaid or any such nonsense. The reason they look flustered and are declining to accept is because tipping is generally not done, and they lack the confidence in English to express that. Story 29. That Brussels is the country and Belgium a city in that country, and that Brussels is a hellhole, and the rest of our country will also soon be under Sharia rule due to the Great Replacement Theory. FCK Elon. Story 30. That moose and beavers are friendly. They are most certainly not. The goose is as mean and evil as they joke about. That is true. Story 31. That everyone here has a gun. It's ridiculous. Sure, most people have guns, but a lot of people have 2 or 3 guns. Story 32. Tourists came off the cruise boat once and stood looking very confused. Waved me down. Excuse me, but where's the heather and sheep and rough men in kilts in the castles? She asked, near tears. Oh, you seem to have confused Scotland with the set of Outlander, ma'am, I replied. Story 33. People said China is communist country. In fact, the modern China are capitalist country with a communist brand name. You can't criticize this brand, but everyone pursue money. Remember how China's trade war with Trump? Had Soviet Union involved in trade war? Story 34. My fiancé is Romanian, and I've seen and heard so many abhorrent stereotypes that couldn't be further from the truth about Romania and its people. They are inviting, great hosts, friendly, etc. Story 35. Canadians are nice. We are very polite for sure, but we aren't nice. Just piss us off or cheer for the opposing hockey team and find out. Story 36. Wildlife will eliminate you in Australia. In reality, you'll be lucky to see a venomous snake or spider. Far more people die in the U.S. from these things. Story 37. People think Canadians live under snow all year round. 95% of Canadians live so far south in Canada that we get snow 4 to 5 months out of the year, and most of that is pretty thin snow. That, and people think we drink maple syrup instead of water, which is weird since, while we produce a ton, I'm pretty sure we export far more than we consume. Story 38. No, we're not angry all the time in Kuwait. It's just hot. No, we're not all rich. It's true we have the highest currency and no taxes, but even with that, some or most of us live paycheck to paycheck. Everything is expensive here. Story 39. That the only things we eat are waffles, fries, and beer. Especially the waffles. Can't even remember the last time I had one. Doesn't help that they're all tourist priced and way overmade everywhere you go. The beer still slaps though. Story 40. India. We are all Hindus, vegetarians, and speak Hindi. Correct status. A majority are vegetarians, Hindus, and speak Hindi, northern states. A significant population is Christians, Muslims, eat non-veg including beef, and speak the respective local language, South India, northeastern states. Story 41. That the U.S. is nothing but fat people. It's not true. The whole world is nothing but fat people. I've been to 5 of 7 continents, dozens of countries. Fat people are everywhere. Story 42. In Canada, recent spikes in immigration are the primary cause of all our social problems such as housing, crime, and unemployment. The reality is, the outgoing Trudeau government was more focused on being seen as aligned with progressive policies and neglected the execution side of their policies. Story 43. That our country is a full-blown desert and we somehow live in tents. All while everyone forgets that we still brought the first civilization that invented paper, many of which were later stolen by the British Museum, as usual. Story 44. That we're all obese. In reality, only about 13 or 120 million Americans are actually obese. I know it's still a shitload, but it's far from all. Story 45. We are all extremely rich and live in beautiful, old houses in the mountains where everyone wears traditional clothing and yodels. Reality. We live in completely overpriced apartments in gray, concrete block cities and see the mountains on weekends or sometimes in the distance from your window, if the weather is nice. Oh, and fog. A lot of fog. Story 46. Myth. Romania is the home of the fictional vampire Count Dracula, who lived in a spooky Transylvanian castle. Truth. Dracula was a fictional character. Bram Stoker loosely based him on Vlad the Impaler, a real Romanian prince who was a brutal ruler, not a vampire. The famous Dracula's Castle, Bran Castle, also has little historical connection to him. Romanians see Vlad as a national hero, not a monster. Story 47. Not necessarily the whole U.S., but at least in the South, that we all love Donald Trump. I didn't vote for this. I didn't want this. These people are giddy at the thought of a society where I don't exist. There are so many other people here that don't want this either. Story 48. That Irish people are the friendliest, nicest people in the world and have the best time. We aren't. It's all an act. Americans come here and we are super friendly to them and then talk shit about Americans behind their backs. We act as if we are these wise, poetical people. But most people here are jealous backstabbers who only care how we appear to people. That's why I like Dutch people. They will be blunt to your face, but they are honest. Story 49. We're supposed to have intimacy with our goats, but there are barely any goats, and either way, we'd remain faithful to our cows. Story 50. We deep fry a lot of stuff, but not everything. And the deep-fried Mars bars are entirely for tourists. I don't know a single native who's had one. Story 51. That we all worship Mandela. Of course he is respected and mostly liked, but I would say Westerners venerate him way more than we do. Many people are quite critical of Mandela, usually from the left. Story 52. Everything you hear about the U.S. is true, and you should believe it. From the 50s to the 70s, everyone in America was John Wayne, even the women. Story 53. That everyone has a gun. Not everyone does, but many gun owners own multiple guns, and that skews the math. Story 54. Americans don't work overtime. Everyone in Japan thinks this. They expect us to be like those funny videos of Ivan getting whooshed out of the job site. Story 55. That U.S. citizens are free and is a place that fosters dreams. Also that Trump is well liked by people who actually have an IQ over 10. Story 56. School shootings aren't an everyday risk to the average American. That's media sensationalization at work. Story 57. Moose and bears are everywhere. I do live in an area where black bears come around every couple months, but I've never seen a moose. Story 58. That everyone here is introverted and that our society doesn't reward extroversion, just like other countries. Yeah, you will likely be left alone in public and won't be approached by strangers that much, but you will still lose opportunities if you're too quiet and or lack social skills. Of course, not everyone believes this about Finland, but I have seen messages like this being spread. Unfortunately, our society is not paradise for socially anxious or autistic people, if you want a job at least. Story 59. That we would appreciate the Hungary is hungry joke. This joke is like saying to black people that they are monkeys. Kurva anyut aki ezel vicheldik. Story 60. France. Supposedly, preparatory classes and engineering schools lead to a stable job and improved life conditions. Not only can people attend the schools after college or other curriculums instead of slaving and destroying their minds and bodies for 23 years to take meaningless examinations, but the engineer title also has no more value and everyone is paid minimum wage after school. provided they can actually find a job in this shoot market. Most people who manage to actually get a correct job either have to move to Paris or switch to finance consulting, or sometimes both. People still believe it because of mass propaganda fed by mainstream medias, previous generations, high school teachers, and the engineering school themselves, where they spout everywhere that it's the royal road, the elite course, and make up bullshit numbers about people's incomes, when there's no bullshit system like this anywhere else in the world, and other countries still fare better than us on an academic and industrial level. Story 61. That Belgium is an artificial state created to be a buffer state. We had twice a revolution to be independent, Flemishes and Walloons together. It's a BS spread by nationalists based on the British and French support in 1830 that stood on our side against the Netherlands and Prussia. They said we would be a buffer between powers. They did not make Belgium. We wanted to be independent. Story 62. That we speak an unintelligible version of Spanish. Yeah, we speak fast and tend to omit the S sound at the end of words, similar to Andalusians, but it's not gibberish either. We have idioms and slang words just like any other country has. Sometimes I also struggle understanding immigrants from other Spanish-speaking countries. It is expected if you are not used to the accent. Story 63. The American Dream. George Carlin said you have to be asleep to believe it, and I totally agree. It's all rigged against the common citizen and for the top one. Story 64. That the UK has bad food. The UK has a wide variety of delicious food, many world-famous chefs, and everything from gastropubs to afternoon tea to takeaway restaurants to fine dining. London has 105 Michelin stars and is ranked 5th in the world, only beaten by 3 cities in Japan and Paris. We have such a wide ethnic diversity, and the food reflects this. Indian, Asian, African, Middle Eastern, Turkish, Eastern European, Italian, Greek, Caribbean, as well as traditional British food with local ingredients such as salmon, venison, beef, lamb, scallops, cod. It seems that U.S. soldiers went home after WW2 after seeing what the Brits ate during the war and assumed this was British cuisine, totally ignoring the fact that there was strict rationing at the time, and we just had to cook what we could get. And then, of course, U.S. opinion and culture just bulldozes its way over everyone else and shouts louder, so their version of reality is often the prevailing belief of everyone. Story 65. After apartheid, we essentially just let the secret police, etc., get away with the terrible things they did. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission recommended prosecutions, but that almost never took place. Story 66. We all speak the Queen's English. Half the people here can barely form a sentence that sounds remotely English with their dialects. Story 67. That we are the home of the free and brave. These days we are neither free nor brave. Well, most of us aren't. Story 68. That we have a yellow filter all around the country, haha. Or what I like to call the third world country filter. Story 69. Our country is the greatest country on earth. Inside the country, well, of course, obviously. Outside the country, you poor deluded fools. Story 70. That we're all cowboys and everyone owns oil wells. Nope. We do have wannabe cowboys, but fewer actual cowboys. Very few own oil wells, and a lot of us are poor. Like people have fudge you money. We have fudge you, I'm broke. Yee-haw. Story 71. I'm Canadian and I do a lot of traveling, and I will say, I don't think we're actually as polite or apologetic in Canada as our claim to fame says. In fact, I think we're maybe grumpier than many other countries, but the difference is we'll passive-aggressively smile while we're apologizing, which is just a nicety, not sincere, and be calling you a name in our head, but outwardly, it gives the impression we are nice. Story 72. That our country is called Holland. That's the historical region, originally a countryaldom, that had the big cities with merchants and sailors that sailed and traded and raided, etc. So people from all over the world dealt mostly with people and goods from Holland, ensuing in many languages adopting a form of that name for the people goods they dealt with, and that eventually came to refer to the whole country in their language. Makes sense, right? But Holland is also the historical region that other regions of the Netherlands have fought and battled with for centuries. Holland was trying to exude its power over them, and they fought for their freedom and independence from Holland. In the first half of the 1800s, they tried to break up the power that Holland had and split the region into 2 provinces, North Holland and South Holland. They are still the provinces with most of the big old cities and tourist destinations. Our own tourist agency even promoted itself as Visit Holland because that's the name foreigners knew, resulting in too many tourists overcrowding places in Holland. So now they promote other 10 provinces too with Visit Netherlands to spread them out more. Story 73. Clean green New Zealand. Up to 65 of the country's rivers carry pollution above acceptable levels, with 95 to 99 of rivers in pastoral, urban, and non-native forested areas contaminated to unsafe swimming levels. Story 74. You can walk into any store and buy a gun easier than groceries. I always get a chuckle when I hear this kind of stuff. Story 75. That all Americans are ignorant, self-centered, and loud. Many are, and there are pockets of us who are not like those people. Story 76. The whole hunting, deer-loving hillbilly stereotype assigned to Americans is really just a Southern thing. Plus, New York and Hollywood are not what they are romanticized to be, unless you go to specific places. Story 77. Bad food, bad teeth, anything to do with accents. More recently, the idea that the country is becoming authoritarian, cracking down on free speech, stabbings, that people are upset the empire is gone. The understanding most people have of our history, that people worship the monarchy, or even that the monarchy is powerful. Story 78. Everybody is a fat, gun-toting dumbass, just waiting for the perfect opportunity to shoot up a school. Story 79. None of us have health insurance, and we all go around shooting each other with guns, because we all own guns, of course. American my whole life. Never been without health insurance. Never fired a gun in my life, much less owned one. Answer. This is very true. The insurance thing is a political talking point that stuck. Even before Obamacare, it was less than 10 that were uninsured, most of which were young adults who didn't want it. As for the guns, less than 50 of the adult population owns a firearm. But to be honest, when compared to the rest of the developed world, we kinda own a ton of guns. We aren't shooting each other willy-nilly, but there is higher gun crime than most other places. But say, knife crime is lower. This one at least is based in truth, unlike the uninsured masses dying on the streets because they can't afford to see a doctor. Story 80. That the Puritans, the Pilgrims, came to Americans seeking to establish religious freedom. Religious freedom was not their intent. They were only seeking freedom to establish settlements to be run under their particular Christian ideology, rather than that of the Church of England. Story 81. All Americans are racist, sexist, fascist pigs that want things to go back to the old world order. There are good guys here. Help us be heard. Smully. Story 82. Story 83. South Korea. Cosmetic surgery is not that super common. Saying such surgeries are common is like saying Americans are all good-looking after watching Hollywood films. Story 84. The whole Americans don't know their own history BS is repeated all the time on this site. That's not true, you just didn't pay attention in history class. Story 85. The Spanish Inquisition was not something extraordinary in its times. As an example, in the same period, 15-17 centuries, in Spain, the Inquisition eliminated between 3,000 and 5,000 heretics witches, including just 50 people in its American colonies. In France, between 5,000 and 10,000, and in the Holy Roman Empire, current Germany, Austria, Switzerland, between 25,000 and 30,000. The maybe surprising fact is that in Spain, many accused people preferred to be tried by the Inquisition rather than by secular courts, because of the Inquisition more formal and consistent procedures. Story 86. Another one, and this concerns a lot of countries as seen by people from the U.S. No, we don't have to deal with immense wait times to get health care. Just like the U.S., we have access to private care as well. But the vast majority of the time, public free health care will serve you well. I've never had to pay for private health care because the wait times have always been completely fine for my needs. I know people who have been stuck waiting for something, and some of them opted for the private care instead. So it's more of a best of both worlds situation. Story 87. That French people are rude. A lot are demanding when it comes to politeness standards and won't accept tourists' ignorance towards it. But if you know how to read the room and say bonjour before abruptly talking to a stranger, you'll be fine most of the time. Don't let Paris be your only argument. French people are hospitable and very nice, especially if you make the effort to show interest in the culture. Story 88. Poland. We aren't universally Catholic. Young generation is secularizing very rapidly. Not everyone is conservative. There are many liberal folks and large pride parades in Warsaw. We do have immigrants, contrary to popular belief, mostly Ukrainians and Belarusians, but non-white ones too. Our flag is white-red, not the other way around. We don't really understand Russian without learning it. Our architecture is not only Soviet brutalism, modern apartment buildings are springing up like mushrooms. Also, we are Central Europe, not Eastern. Story 89. We live in the greatest nation on earth, he said with manifest destiny sparkling in his eyes and the drool sliding gently out of the side of his mouth. Story 90. That if one of family members died, then after a month of the passing another member died, it will be simultaneously cycle for the family. Story 91. Columbus discovered America. The media is liberal. Jesus was a white guy with pretty blue eyes. Tax cuts for the rich create jobs trickles down. Republicans are fiscally responsible. Antifa is a radical org of leftists. Trump wants the Epstein documents released to the public. There is literally thousands in the U.S. Story 92. That we are the land of the free and home of the brave. When we are rapidly falling into fascism, our two-party system refuses to listen to its citizens, and our cops are take down innocent people because they are afraid for their lives, while wearing full body armor and carrying multiple weapons. Oh wait, nobody believes we were ever that good. It's just our citizens who were fooled. Not any longer. Story 93. Your vote matters. It doesn't. The presidency, Congress, and other political positions are bought by the highest bidders. Story 94. England is overrun with illegal immigrants. Absolute nonsense peddled by con-men politicians, amplified by the right-wing gutter press, and gobbled up by gullible racists. Story 95. We won both emu wars, and the shoot peddled on the internet is fake news created by the British Parliament, even though they were outraged at the plans to cull emus originally. Story 96. Our trains are far from being on time regularly. It's more of a coin toss, really, or a D4 with only the 4 meaning the train is actually on time, and the 1 meaning it won't show at all. Story 97. That we are a really safe and welcoming country with Western values. Meanwhile, we are one of the most disliked, racist, homophobic, and bigoted countries in Europe. Welcome to Czech Republic. Story 98. All the women here are hot and will put out for any gringo that tries. A lot of women here are hot, and guys too, but they're not interested in your passport, bro. Story 99. Viking is something cool. It's all due to a PR makeover in the 1840s. Fact is, they have more in common with Somali pirates warlords. Story 100. That we have wild animals in our backyard, and we don't have water, food, live in a hut, walk barefoot. I've never seen a lion or any wild animals in my life. We have food and water. We don't live in a hut. We have houses like the rest of the world. Story 101. That it is always cold and the whole country is covered in snow in the winter. Some people probably think there's snow all summer too. Sure, Norway is generally colder than a lot of places, but along the coast it's not as cold as people think. Growing up in the Southwest, we rarely have snow on the ground for more than a few days at a time before it melts again. Temperatures don't usually stay below 0°C for very long. We almost never have snow at Christmas time. I spent a year in the Midwest in the U.S., and they were surprised at my reaction to the huge amounts of snow we got there. Yes, I'd seen snow before, but never like that. Story 102. That we all have ginger hair, live in turf hut, and wear kilts. If only they looked into the cultural and technological influence that we have contributed to the world. Story 103. That we play mandolin. Never ever heard of a guy who plays that instrument. No, not even grandparents. It doesn't happen. Story 104. That it is always raining. Sure, there are parts that get a lot of rain, but there is whole side of the country that is in a rain shadow and gets relatively little rain. Also from movies and TV, there is always thunder before it starts raining. Story 105. Some years back when I was still in school, every single news outlet that did an article or a report on the Finnish education system had to point out that in schools, we are not given homework. It was one of the surprising things that made the system great. This is absolutely not true at all. I've even tried to find a source for this. There isn't one. The education is great for sure, but we also did and do for sure get homework, LOL. Story 106. That people here are happy and carefree because we have football, beaches, and carnival. As if event planning and organizing isn't a ton of year-round work. And all this perceived quote-unquote happiness is just a form of therapy and an opportunity to let loose from all the anxiety and depression from exploitation and suffering. Story 107, that we are and were founded as a Xi'an nation. And, to note, not everyone in and out of the country, but a loud and ignorant numerical minority. Story 108, there's snow 24/7, 365, and that it's always cold. I don't think most people understand that from our hottest to our coldest is an 80 Celsius range, 176 F for any Americans here. Story 109. It is cold year-round, when in actuality in most of the populated parts of the country, it can get pretty hot during the summer months. Story 110. That the USA abolished slavery. First, we lie that the Emancipation Proclamation ended slavery during the Civil War. It didn't. It was a strategic move to declare free the slaves in states that were in current active secession and did not nullify existing slave return laws that applied to unincorporated territories and non-secessionist states. The second lie is the 13th Amendment, which made slavery unconstitutional except when used as a punishment for breaking the law, which paved the way for Jim Crow and our current prison-for-profit system. There are currently more enslaved people in the USA than at any point in national history. Story 111. We are not on a siesta every day eating pasta. We work and overwork like slaves for crazy low wages and a lot of overtime. Story 112. That it's the most racist and sexist country in the world. I believed this for a long time, until I actually learned about other nations. Story 113. Iceland. We don't actually believe in elves. Those who say they do are just trying to be quirky and interesting. Story 114. Yes, we speak French in Quebec. No, it's not the same French as in France. We have very little in common besides the language, honestly. Arguably, we speak more French than people in France. It's more offensive that you use French stereotypes for us than the stereotypes themselves. Story 115. That we all wear shoes in the house. A lot of us don't, especially those of us who come from cultural backgrounds where shoes inside the house is frowned upon. Story 116. I've had so many people tell me they think every U.S. American is rich, when in reality, most people are living paycheck to paycheck. Also, they think if the U.S. would give them a visa, they would easily become rich very quickly. Very unlikely. Story 117. Not everyone. Most have enough common sense to know it's a joke, but a scary amount actually believe people from my country have intimacy with sheep. Story 118. That everyone has a gun. We have more than one gun for every person in the U.S. That doesn't mean everyone owns a gun, lol. Just that some people have 100. Story 119. About the USA, that we are all complete idiots. Not true. Something over half of us are complete idiots. Story 120. If you visit or live here, then you will likely be a victim or witness to gun violence. In reality, you're far more likely to get in a car accident. Story 121. In U.S., our taxes go to China to pay down our debt, which in turn funds their military to fight against the U.S. Story 122. Our famous peaceful Carnation Revolution was not so peaceful. Several people died, but if you tell that to any Portuguese person, they will not believe you. Story 123. That we use an app to check if we are related before we have intimacy. That we all believe in elves. Story 124. That everybody in Switzerland is rich. No, we're not. And no, we never voted against not having to work our entire lives. Never happened. Go to Monaco in order to find out how to never work your entire life. Story 125. Trickle-down economics. People with money can make money very easily, and they aren't going to pass down that wealth. Story 126. That families won't offer visiting children dinner, but let them play alone when the families eat. This was more common in the 70s, and although people my age, Gen Z, has heard about other people doing it, it is absolutely out of the norm and would absolutely cause offense. In no way a generally accepted behavior. It went kind of viral like last year, and I think it painted a very unfair picture of our culture. Story 127. We all have guns. 50 of Americans have guns. Many of those have guns as a tool for hunting, but there are those who worship guns. The last group are the ones in the news. Last time I touched a gun was in the 80s, and that was basic military training. Story 128. that Sweden is the violation capital of Europe. We do have a lot of reported violation, yes, but it is partly because we count anything that lacks consent as violation. No need for it to be penetrative, coercive, or violent. Partly it is because we count every instance of violation. So what would count as one violation charge in another country can become several in Sweden. Story 129. That all Americans are stupid, arrogant, or fat. I know a decent amount of people aren't any of those. Story 130. Bullfighting and flamenco are culturally important. No, most people dislike the first and don't care about the second. Story 131. People from the UK don't, as a rule, drink loads of tea. Somewhere around half of adults in the UK drink it regularly, but coffee has become more popular over time, especially among younger people, to the point where the UK is just as much a nation of coffee drinkers as it is tea drinkers. And a good quarter of us don't drink either. Story 132. That we are oh so happy and hygge is only in Denmark. We have massive depression rates and hygge isn't unique for our country at all. Story 133. Everyone thinks we live in 500 square foot apartments and high-rises. Wrong. We live in 300 square foot apartments and high-rises. Story 134. We're more passive-aggressive than nice, but we are generally nice. Just don't be a male body part. Sorry. Story 135. I'm Northern Irish, and I don't really know what myths other people have about us. Feel free to let me know. Story 136. When we say we live on estate, it's not Downton Abbey kind of estate. It's 100 square meters cubes with 0.5 meters between each house and no off-street parking spaces. Story 137. That we lost most wars. We won most wars, and even the one we lost, we only lost a battle, not the war. Story 138. That our whole country is cold 365 days a year. Nothing could be more wrong. Many parts of Canada are south of the U.S., and we can grow most fruits and vegetables, including tropical ones depending where you live, and bamboo and palm trees. A North American map shows southern Ontario is south of the northern states. We get too many days very hot and humid, especially the last few summers, and we are never guaranteed a white Christmas, and have had many green ones with no snow. Another funny thing is that tourists think they can drive coast to coast in a couple of days. Story 139. The Holy Office, aka the Spanish Inquisition. It offered better guarantees than civil courts and didn't torture and execute as many people as it actually did. Some prisoners even blasphemed in order to be judged by the Catholic Church. Nobody would expect it. Story 140. Internal. We are the best country in the world. We have the most beautiful women on earth. No, we don't. External. We are not socialist. Most of our population despise that mustache guy. Not all of us are disrespectful, and we don't want to take advantage of people in being disrespectful and break the laws. Story 141. That we are all progressive or even woke or respect indigenous rights. No, we are not. We have at least 3 conservative provinces and a few are barely progressive in terms of result. In light of that, don't look at our non-white and assume they are progressive or will buy into BIPOC as a term. Fortunately, at least in my city, they just go black and indigenous. Story 142. America seems to be so well documented that I find foreigners tend to know as much about it as I do. Story 143. Canadians and bagged milk. Canadians in Ontario use bagged milk, but pretty much everyone else in Canada uses cartons or jugs like normal people. Story 144. We're all raging alcoholics whose men wear skirts, kilts. I've also yet to hear the phrase, "Okay the new," from an actual fellow Scot. Story 145. That everyone listens to disco polo. Most people only enjoy it at parties or when tipsy. I'm not one of those people, though. I love it all the time. Story 146. Elizabeth Bathory, a.k.a. the Blood Countess. She did not bathe in virgin's blood. She was a victim of a witch hunt made by the Habsburgs, who wanted to weaken her family's influence. Story 147. We're environmentalists and protect the environment. Nobody buys our lies about being good to natives anymore, but the environment persists, and it's the greenwashing reason heinous mining companies set up HQ in Canada. Then our liberal government protects them and works hard to hush things up, and it never appears on our federally funded propaganda fount. Story 148. From the U.S., that there is a such thing as American exceptionalism. There might have been once, but it's definitely gone now. Story 149. The story where George Washington chopped down a cherry tree and confessed to it. Apparently, that story was made up in the 1800s. Story 150. That there isn't enough. Enough anything. Money, resource, people, expertise. But there is. If the money didn't go through so many pockets, if people weren't so incentivized to leave, things could be so much better. Story 151. That we're basically surrounded by animals that want to eliminate us. An Australian can go their whole life without seeing a snake. Story 152. What the rest of the world thinks is Canadian bacon is totally wrong. The real thing is much better, and yes, we do keep it a secret from the rest of you. Story 153. That we're a super safe and friendly country all round. We're better than many, sure, but in no way are we a country you should let your guard down in. Especially the city where pickpockets, crackheads, and violent youths are kind of everywhere. Oh, and our seagulls are evil. Watch out for those too. Story 154. Not everyone likes tea. We don't all say Bole Owara. We don't all speak like the Queen. Wales is a country. It's Worcester, not Worcester. Story 155. That we are the Central American Switzerland. We don't have the same development indexes. Our country is very dangerous. We have a lot of corruption. We don't have snow. We don't have good public transportation. We don't have well-built streets. We don't have such mountains. You can't leave anything unattended because people will steal it. We have overcrowded jails. And well, Switzerland doesn't. Story 156. Many Chinese people don't realize that the government is controlling them. Typical plot in dystopia movies books. So they actually live happily in China, unlike rumors online saying everyone dislikes the government. Story 157. Sauna obsession. Yeah, sure. Our houses have saunas, but they often turn into a sort of storage room, and some of us are uncomfortable with nudity. Story 158. That everything here will eliminate you, which is utterly ridiculous. Some of it merely makes you pray for the sweet release of passing. Story 159. I've only ever seen the non-brewed stuff myself, usually by the brand Gastro Group with the red and blue label. Mind you, chippies aren't my typical go-to takeaway, so it's possible some of them have other stuff. The non-brewed condiment is definitely what you'll usually find, though. So if a classic malt vinegar doesn't end up working for you, then it might be what you're missing. Story 160. People think everyone in the Netherlands is constantly doing substances, plant substance especially, when really that's mostly just tourists who go to Amsterdam for that. Story 161. Israeli, and I will get downvoted for this, sue me, that we stole land from Palestinians when 1. Palestinian was a European word meaning outsider, imposed by Roman colonizers that was used to refer to Jews Israelis until the 1960s. There was never an actual Arab country named Palestine. 2. You can buy a plane ticket to Israel and touch with your own two hands very real artifacts and buildings, including the Wailing Wall, that predate Arab imperialism and the birth of Islam by at least several hundred years. 3. Hundreds of thousands of Arabs left Israel in 1948, not because they were kicked out, but because 6 Arab nations convinced them to reject the partition plan, which would have given them half of modern Israel, and attacked Israel at once. And they told the Arabs to leave so they could make quick work of slaughtering Jews who had arrived fresh out of surviving the Holocaust. In the end, they failed. 3.5 bonus. 800,000 Middle Eastern Jews were kicked out of Arab nations around this time, where they had also lived for thousands of years. But nobody seems to care about that when they talk of peoples being kicked out of places. 4. Palestinian leaders were offered land 5 times. All 5 times they said no. 5. Even the most white-skinned of European-born Jews who have spent thousands of years outside of Israel are genetically closer to Middle Eastern Jews than to European Caucasians. And brown-skinned Middle Eastern Jews far outnumber the light-skinned ones, 70, because the Nazis eliminate so many. They certainly weren't white enough for the Nazis. Criticize Israeli leadership and the IDF all you want, and we fully acknowledge that Palestinians have been there for thousands of years alongside Jews, but the European colonization myth is plain racist and Semitic. Story 162. That's a contradiction in terms. If it's a lie, but everyone believes it, then who's left to identify it's a lie? Story 163. that Canadians have small male body part. I have devoted my life to prove this cruel myth wrong. To any women that will give me leave to do a short, you know what I mean, demo. Story 164, Canadian here. Saying about rather than about has always confused me because I've never heard any of my countrymen say the word like that.